Good afternoon and welcome to Talking Drupal. This is episode 75, November 26, 2014. Today we have a guest on, and the topic of today's show is Teach Yourself Drupal, a Kickstarter. So welcome everyone to the show. Hey John.
Good afternoon.
So John Picozzi from Oomph. I can see John is in the office today, and he is actually growing a beard. I can see it in your video there. What's going on? Is that laziness, busyness, or intentional? Yes, all of the above?
Laziness, busyness, intention. Oh, yes, all of the above. I had to reprocess that a little bit, but yeah. Everybody's like, is it for Movember? And I'm like, no. I mean, it is obviously November, and I am growing facial hair, but usually every winter I try to grow out the goatee, and this year I said to my wife, I'm going to go for the whole thing. She looked at me and kind of frowned and shook her head no, and we're going to try it. We're going to see how it goes. So over the next couple of weeks, you'll see this hopefully getting bigger and crazier. But.
You know, it's funny because I've attempted to grow some stuff in the 25 years of my marriage, and my wife is always saying no, which is probably good for me because I'm not actually sure I could grow anything that looks good. So she's probably helping me more than hurting me. And we all had dinner. All the hosts here had dinner on Saturday night together, which was fun. I'm not sure a restaurant expected us to sit there for 4 hours, but we had a good time.
Yeah, they definitely lost money on our group.
Yeah, if they were counting dollars per table, it didn't work out well for them. But did you notice that night that Jason's has grown a beard as well? He's got a full beard happening as well now.
Yeah, he's there's a rumor around the office here that if you grow a beard, it actually cuts down on your likeliness to get sick.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, prevents germs. I don't know.
Does it? Oh, okay.
I'm gonna give it a go. We'll see how it goes.
All right, so we're going to extend that rumor into our listeners. Thank you so much. We also have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design, as usual. Welcome, Nick.
Good afternoon. Looking forward to today's topic. Got a couple of clients doing a similar route, so looking forward to hearing directly from somebody on the Drupal end. I don't know about you guys down there, but we're getting some snow up here already. It's starting to stick. It's kind of nasty. First snowstorm of the season up here, so I expect people will have no idea what they're doing on the road for the next couple of days. But looking forward to the show topic and get a lot of questions.
Oh, good. So let's get into our show topic. So the show title is Teach Yourself Drupal, a Kickstarter. So it was probably 2 weeks ago maybe that I received a note from Marc Isaacson, is someone I didn't know, and said, hey, by the way, I've got a Kickstarter program, a project that I'm starting up related to Drupal, and I'd love to talk about it with you. So him and I had a meeting, and we got on the phone together and chatted about his Kickstarter project, which is an interesting one. It's interesting from a few perspectives. One is it's a Drupal project that is being funded through Kickstarter, which I'm not sure that everyone's aware of, but I think there's been a number of modules that have tried to use social sourcing of funds to get to build. Like, I know some of the key modules that are currently getting converted to 8. Those contributors are looking for funding to source to move those modules to Drupal 8. I heard that in some of the presentations from one of the recent DrupalCons when we were sort of looking for module updates. So it is very common for Drupal projects. I said very common, but it's probably not very common, but it's not unusual to see Drupal projects look to the community to get funded through a source like Kickstarter. So Marc has started one, and he's going to talk to us today about specifically what his project is. We're also going to talk about Kickstarter in general. I haven't had any direct exposure with it. I have some friends that have run some successful Kickstarter campaigns, and I'm interested to learn a little bit more about that process itself, although Marc is just at the beginning of it. So We'll get his viewpoint from maybe 3 weeks into it and some planning. And we also can talk about his topic in general, which is self-paced education through online sources, which is what his project's all about. So that was a long introduction to the show. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So, Marc, you're joining us from Colorado, I believe.
That's right.
And so Nick was just mentioning that we're getting a little snow here in New England. I imagine you already have some snow.
It's funny, people always associate Colorado with a lot of snow because what you see on the television all the time, they show you if you go west on I-70 towards the mountains. In the foothills here, we tend to have pretty nice winters. I think it's supposed to get into the 50s today. We did have some snow this morning, and we have already had our first, I don't know if we'd call it a snowstorm, but we've definitely already had some snowfalls this season. But it's looking pretty nice and sunny out there right now, and the snow we got this morning is already melted. So we'll see how warm it gets today.
You know, what's funny, Marc, is because I think Colorado used to always be associated with snow, but over the past 12 months, I'm not sure Colorado is associated with that anymore. If anyone understands what I'm getting at, when you think of Colorado, I don't think of snow any longer, right? Does anyone agree with that? What do you think of, guys?
Well, there's a few other things that tend to make the news.
Exactly.
Would that be skiing?
Oh, yeah, it must be that.
Yeah, it must be skiing. Thanks, Nick. So there's a voice, a little voice in the background, right, guys? That's what we always say. That little voice is Jason in our heads. Welcome, Jason. You were a little late, but we're happy to have you.
Hey, guys. Nice to have you on the show, Marc.
Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. I'm really excited to be here.
And Jason, what you've missed so far is that we talked about you growing a full beard, and you still have it intact, and John is joining you. So let's get into the show. So, Marc, tell us, how about if you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's get into what Teach Yourself Drupal is all about.
Sure. So after I had graduated college, I was a computer programmer, and I got tired of doing that, so I went off and I did some other things for a little while, one of which was being a high school math teacher. And in the course of my master's program, I also did some teaching at elementary school level and community college level. So after I'd done that for a while, I decided that I did want to come back to programming. And so I taught myself how to do Drupal. And it was a long process for me because I spent pretty much 6 months, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, just studying whatever I could find online to learn how to do this. So I built up my skills, I built up the business, and I've been doing really well with it. But I see that there's a shortage of Drupal developers out there. And so, you know, with my background in programming, with my background in teaching, and with the experience that I had of how long it took me to learn Drupal, I have, for a couple years or so now, thought, you know, I really ought to do something to combine my love of teaching and programming in Drupal and put it together in a way that would help other people so they wouldn't have to go through that same thing that I went through in learning Drupal. So that gives you a
so quick, that takes us to Teach Yourself Drupal, right?
Yeah.
That's your project. What is this project?
Well, this is, as you mentioned, it's a self-paced training project. It's an online project, and it's free. It's free, totally open source Drupal training that will allow people to, whoever has an internet access, visit the site and get some world-class education to help them get up to speed with their Drupal skill set.
And so what's the closest thing that you see like it? I mean, both in teaching style, but also in the Drupal landscape.
So one of the things, as far as the teaching style, I haven't, of course, I don't know all of the things that are available online, but I haven't seen teaching sites that take the approach of what I call project-based learning. So I think that the teaching style is somewhat different from pretty much everything else that's out there, because most other things that are out there will take more of a task-based learning, that they'll, we're going to do this, and so they'll take you through the steps of doing a something, but it's not within the context of anything else. So I would say that it's very different in teaching style from what's currently available. But as far as what would be the closest to it, certainly people are aware of buildamodule.com and Drupalize.me and lynda.com, and there are other sites like Modules Unraveled, and there used to be Learn by the Drop. So this isn't the first of its kind to provide any type of Drupal training, but the sites that I've mentioned so far, it's a mixture maybe. Some of them are paid sites, some of them are free sites, but none of them are really open source sites, and certainly none of them are ridiculously open source sites. And so where I came up with the idea of open source and then extended into ridiculously open source is Khan Academy. So you would think of this site in terms of maybe a mixture of something like build a module mixed with Khan Academy and then taken up another notch.
Marc, what makes it, you say it's not open source, what makes a training product open source or not?
Well, the typical way of making something open source is just that you do literally what the word says, that you make your source available to people. And a common way that people will do that is using GitHub. And certainly that's something that I'm doing with this project right now, is I make all the source available on GitHub. And you can look at what Khan Academy has done as well. They've created a profile for themselves on GitHub, and they make things available, like anywhere from the software that they use to format their math documents and their exercise generator, to things like how they're configuring their servers. So that's one piece of it, is letting people see the code behind it.
So actually I have a question. Does that, because generally when it's open source, there's two reasons for that. One, so that you can install your own instance, and second, so you can contribute back. Does this extend to the content? I mean, are you open sourcing the screencasts and videos? And if so, how are you providing those so if somebody installs their own instance, they can gather those?
So as far as the screencasts themselves, right now all the video is available on a YouTube channel of mine. What I'm looking to do, I need to follow up with GitHub to see whether it would be within their terms of use. What I'd like to do, the way that I'm shooting the screencast is there's the video capture, and then there's a separate audio that you will overlay on the video. And what I'd like to do is make those files available to people, most notably the video captures, because that way if people wanted to translate the scripts, which I make available in the GitHub repos, they could actually take their audio and overlay it on the video that I've already shot. So yes, it extends, it's totally open source. Everything that I can make available to somebody else, I will make available to them. The audio, the video, the scripts, any custom modules that I've written, all of the source, and then additionally there's things that I will make available as well, because it's not just open source, it's ridiculously open source.
So we're going to talk about ridiculously open source a little bit later in this conversation, because it's an interesting philosophy that you have that we need to pay attention to a little bit. But so you're saying that the platform this is delivered on is open source. All of the content is delivered in open source.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And as far as collaboration, definitely, I'm setting up the GitHub repos, and I've already gotten my first person to collaborate and contribute to the project in helping me out with translating the script that I had written for the screencast. And so he went onto GitHub, he forked my repository, and he made a pull request of his translation, and then I just merged that right into the project. Another thing that I'm maintaining with all of the stuff that I'm doing, because it's on GitHub, we've got wikis and we've got the issue queues. So anybody can get in and update the wiki, and anybody can file an issue with this. So it's totally the intention that people will have the opportunity to collaborate and contribute to this project to whatever extent that they would like to be able to do.
So, Marc, how do you respond to the question, or somebody is looking at your Kickstarter and they're wondering like, how is this guy qualified? Why is this guy qualified to teach others or start this project up? How do you respond to that question of how are you qualified to be able to do this?
It's a fair.
Hey, Mark, and before you answer that, I want to append something to John's question. And is it the intention for you to be the only supplier of the content, or is the idea that other authors are also providing content in this platform?
Okay, so let me try to make sure to remember to answer both parts of the question. So first of all, it is a fair enough question to ask. Why should we back you, Mark? Like, how do I know that you even know what you're doing? And it's something that if somebody doesn't know me, that the easiest way for me to answer it is to, during the course of this Kickstarter campaign, start to show some examples of the screencasts, as well as that if you wanted to, you could look at, I've got my website that you could visit and look at the portfolio, although it's a bit outdated. You can see in the FAQ on the Kickstarter page that what I've moved to right now is doing more custom web applications for clients, so I'm more of a back-end guy, so it's not so easy to see the stuff that I'm doing on sites for people from the front end. But you can look at the portfolio that I have. Go to Drupal.org and look at my user profile, Vegan Triathlete, and see the types of things that I've posted, see patches that I've submitted to issue queues, check me out in those ways. But to continue answering the question, like, no, it's not the idea that I'm the one and only person doing this. Somebody's got to get the project off the ground. Somebody's got to be the face of this project and this idea. But I'm not looking for it to be me and only me. It's not about me. This is about the community. It's about pulling in a community and collaborating with members in the community. And I'd love to have other people contributing to the project. And part of the idea of being ridiculously open is that you're willing to iterate and you're willing to make mistakes. When people use a Roost site, one of the things that they get out of using the site is that they're learning about the process of learning. They're not just seeing this final polished product that looks so perfect that makes everybody think, wow, you must have to be a genius to do that. I'd never be able to build that. So it's part of the intent that iteration is going to be part of the process here. And that's where we can ensure that this is something that ultimately we're going to get it right, and it's going to be the top-notch product. And there are all these avenues for people to be able to get involved, to where they can call me out on things and say, Mark, like, that was wrong. Like, what you said there, that doesn't even conform to best practice. They can file it in the issue queue, and then I can respond to that, and we can get that updated.
Hey, Mark, one of the things that inspired me to have you on the show today in our conversation yesterday was the feeling that I got from you is something you just touched on, which was, I got this great idea. I know the community needs it, and we should just start doing it, and I know it's not going to be perfect. And I think and a lot of people who get into Kickstarter, I don't think take that approach all the time, because I think if any of us look at your Kickstarter campaign and we look at what your goal is, we look at where you are, it looks like a big problem to solve, to reach that number of dollars in the amount of time you have. But I believe that your approach in terms of, hey, I'm going to jump into this and try to get started is a really excellent one. And so with that, I want to ask a next question, which is, what if this campaign isn't successful? What if you don't reach what your goal is? How does that sit with you?
Right. So it's a simple answer to that question. Keep on going. This Kickstarter campaign, whether it gets funded or it doesn't get funded, this is the beginning of the journey, not the end of the journey, no matter what happens. So if it doesn't get funded, I still owe it to the people who did back me to continue on with the project and to continue moving it forward so that we can bring it to a level of maturity and support that we do have enough people behind it. So I'm totally okay. I mean, obviously I'd be even more okay to reach the funding goal and be able to have the backing to really put full time into getting this off the grounds. But if it doesn't get funded, it doesn't. That's just one step along the journey, and we continue taking the next step and the next step and the next step.
Okay, so it sounds like the Kickstarter really is to allow you to dedicate full time for a period of time to getting the project off the ground, but you believe in the project enough that you'll do it regardless, and if it doesn't get funded, it's just going to be a part-time thing, at least in in the beginning, beginning stages.
Yeah, I'll have to put time into it as I can put into it. And one of the great things about having launched the Kickstarter, though, is that it really, I mean, not to be silly using the same word over and over again, but it kicks me into gear to start getting out there and talking to people, getting the word out there. And I've had the opportunity in these few short days that I've been running the Kickstarter to get some really great contacts. So I've already gotten some other potential collaborators that I could use on the project where I won't have to do all of this on my own that could help move things forward faster. So yeah, absolutely. This isn't a one-off thing that if I get my money, I'm going to do it, and if I don't, I'm going to just take my ball and go home. This is for real. I'm serious about this. I think there's a big need for something like this right now, and I want to see make it happen.
Well, there's the Acquia U going on right now, which is sort of like the first thing that comes to my mind in thinking of a parallel thing out there that has a lot of support from that company. Of course, their goal is to train people and then hire them. What's kind of an interesting idea here is finding companies that need to develop Drupal resources and get them to support it.
Right.
I mean, that's something that all the Drupal shops that are out there that are having such a hard time hiring people, backing something like this is to the it's good for everybody.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I envision long term, that while I'm looking to get the project off the ground with a Kickstarter campaign, if you look at my vision on the page, it's absolutely my intention that ultimately the ongoing development will be funded by there's so many different web shops and so many different organizations and entities out there that really could benefit from an increased supply of highly skilled Drupal developers, and it would be in their own interest to fund the ongoing development of the project, just because of the fact that it would give them more potential employees. But bringing up Acquia U, I mentioned I had already made some really good contacts, and one of the contacts that I have made is Heidi Wang from Acquia, and she said that she's working on something similar for Drupal 8, and she'd like to see how we can collaborate with each other.
That's great.
So I definitely will be in touch with the people at Acquia.
So getting back to some of the specifics of this product, who are the authors? I'm not sure I'm clear on who will be authoring the content that shows up on Teach Yourself Drupal.
Well, ideally, we're going to have a lot of authors because of the fact that, like I said, with the repository being there and people being able to fork the repository, they can fork it. They can author a script for something, they can do a pull request, and that can come right back into the project. But
are you saying that anyone can post content on Teach Yourself Drupal? And I'd be concerned about the quality of that. So how would the quality control work in that scenario?
They wouldn't be posting to the website, the teachyourselfdrupal.org website. They would be putting their suggestions into the repository. So for instance, they could be writing out a script that they'd like to see utilized for a screencast, and then I'd be able to pull that script into the repository. But no, they're not going to have access to just sign in to teachyourselfdrupal.org and upload videos to it, or be adding content to the site in that fashion.
So then that raises two questions then, kind of related. One is, obviously they can clone the site, put it on their own server, and add their own content. But my other question about the content being open source, how are you providing that information, and how is that information getting into the Drupal database and being shared back? Is it just YouTube and then some script that you've written that pulls it in? I mean, how is that information going back and forth between the Git repository and the Drupal site, the Drupal instance?
Okay, so as far as the videos themselves, the videos will reside on YouTube. So as far as getting the videos to appear on teachyourselfdrupal.org, that's something that I still need to make a decision how I want to architect that, but it'll be some type of embed that's going to make it appear on the site in the same way that Khan Academy is doing it right now. When you use Khan Academy and you go to any of their lesson pages, it's just an embedded YouTube video. So you could watch it on YouTube or you could watch it on the site. So, and I think I'm forgetting the second part of your question that you asked already.
How are people gathering that information if they have one on their own instance? Then, if
Yeah, so
the script isn't
right, it's one thing to version code; it's another to version content, and let them sort of check it out. Is that where you're getting at, Nick?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's what. So with the roots.org site, I actually chose to do that on GitHub pages using Jekyll because of the fact that it's really hard. That stuff is in the database. It's hard for people to get to. And since the roots.org site is pretty much going to be a static site with just a few pages on it, I chose to do that on GitHub pages so they didn't have that issue of, well, how do I get at the stuff that's in the database for all these nodes? So as far as the teachyourselfdrupal.org site, I'm looking at what I can do in terms of featureizing things, but we're still going to always run into that situation of, like, a node is a node, and the node body is inside of the node, and I certainly can't just dump out the database and make that available to everybody because there's going to be privacy issues with that. Like, I can't be revealing members of the site's email addresses. So,
but with node export, that might actually, and like using UUID and that sort of thing. I mean, you might be able to work something out like that where you have like a content repository that you can.
Yeah, or even an import-export with feeds. I mean, you can use data export to export a CSV that you can commit.
That would be really slick. If you actually set it up so that from the main website you had all the content available as a feed, and then the repo is set up with a feed importer. That way you would just constantly be importing. You set up the instance, and then you'd be importing the content regularly from the source.
Yeah, and you could actually open an API for children's sites where people, and I've done that. So if you have questions about that after the show, we can certainly talk.
Great. Yeah, these are all great ideas. Yeah, these are the type of things that I look to collaborate with other people to come up with some of these ideas, because I'm serious about making this as ridiculously open as I can. I don't want anything to be locked up where people can't get at it. I'm not looking to keep any secrets or hold on to the keys of the kingdom in any way. I want to expose everything that I can to people, and I'll be looking for any way that I can do it, because I want people to know how the site was built. That's one of the things that they learn by using the site, is how the site itself was built.
So, Marc, a few times you've used the word roosts, and you've mentioned the Roosts website, which we haven't actually talked about what that is and what that means. So, what is a roost?
Okay, so the acronym stands for Ridiculously Open Online Self-Training Site. I chose the acronym because the roost is supposed to invoke an image of like a nest, like a safe place where the young birds are nurtured and fed until they're able to grow strong enough to fly off on their own into the world and be self-sufficient. So that's where I came up with the idea of using roosts. And so the important point of that, and I've used this word a lot of times already, is this notion of being ridiculously open. And so what separates a ridiculously open site from other types of open sites is that the information that's provided on the site goes far beyond just some code. Here's the code that I use on this, but sharing the whole experience, and it can encompass a lot of different things. Like, for instance, one of the things that would be probably atypical that you would see shared on a website is that as I'm working on this project, I'll keep a timesheet as though I do when I work for any other client, and I'll make the timesheets available to people so they can get a sense of how long did it take to build. So let's look at his timesheet, see he wrote this custom module that he did a screencast on, but how long did it really take to build that module? So being ridiculously open means that share timesheets, share everything that I can about the project, and that's what the nature of a Roost is providing a safe place, providing a collaborative place, and providing a place where everybody gets a chance to learn about the learning that's happening on the site. They're not just learning about, oh, this site teaches me how to, write a module. I've got the repository set up for my Kickstarter campaign. I've got the repository set up so that I can log all of the challenges and hurdles that I've had to overcome in this whole process.
So a Roost is a philosophy of sharing the learning experience, right? And your Kickstarter campaign in this particular project that we're calling Teach Yourself Drupal is an example of a Roost.
Yeah, this is being built as a Roost site.
Okay, so the concept of a Roost, and if you go to Roosts, I think it's plural, right? ROOSTS.org, is a separate website that you've created to start to explain what you mean by a Roost and teach people what that concept is about.
Right.
Okay.
And this is completely separate from the Kickstarter campaign, so you'll develop that independently, or is a portion of the Kickstarter meant to help fund this?
No, all of the funds brought in through the Kickstarter are meant to go towards developing teachyourselfdrupal.org. Okay. Any time that I spend on the Roosts and the Roost website is totally on my own time. And so that's why one of the things that I mentioned about being ridiculously open, that there will be full transparent accounting for people that back the project, that I'll show exactly how much money I brought in and exactly where I've spent everything. Where did, what were my expenses and how many hours did I spend and what was my net income, from this project after I've done all the rewards, et cetera, et cetera. And so people will know down to the penny where that money went towards, but every penny of that campaign is meant to go towards building the teachyourselfdrupal.org product.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about Kickstarter in general, not necessarily related to your campaign specifically. Why did there's a few options out there for social sourcing of funding. Why did you choose Kickstarter?
Well, one of the things that makes Kickstarter different from some of the other options is that it's an all-or-nothing type of funding platform, and that gives backers a sense of confidence that I can pledge an amount, but I'm not going to have to pay that amount if the project doesn't get fully funded, and that's good for a couple of reasons. One reason is that they don't have to worry about the situation. So this project has a $64,000 project budget. What happens if I got funded for $11,000 and it wasn't all or nothing? That puts me in a bad situation and my backers in a bad situation, because what am I committing to for the $11,000? So it's all or nothing, so that they know we don't run into a situation that I've gotten a small amount of the funding and now I need to decide what I'm going to do. And the other thing that's nice about that is that they can have that comfort level saying, like, well, gee, Marc seems like a pretty nice guy, and I'm willing to, let's say, pony up $10 or $100 or so, just to see what'll happen. But they know nothing's going to happen if there aren't a sufficient number of other people who also agree with them on that. So that's one big thing about Kickstarter, is that it is an all or nothing type funding. And another reason for doing it through Kickstarter is that part of the big thing that I want to do here is to build the community, to build the collaboration around it. And Kickstarter gives you that opportunity to build community. It's an established platform that's well recognized by people. And so it gives me a way that I can start building this collaboration with the people who are interested in the project.
How did you come to the dollar value that you set for the project? Is that what you feel is the real cost for you to build this platform out? And does it include the content, by the way? It's unclear on what that gives for the $64,000. It's the platform and the content for what?
I thought it did cover a
Okay.
certain amount of the content.
I'm glad that you asked it, though, because I think it's an important question to ask, because a lot of people, I think, will look at that. They see a $64,000 price tag, and I think for a lot of people, that's going to be a little bit maybe disconcerting. They're going to say, whoa, wait a minute, that's a lot of money. Why should this guy get all that money? So I'm really glad that you did ask about that and how I came up with the amount. And being that I'm serious about being ridiculously open, I'm just going to tell you straight out. So, the way that I arrived at that amount of money is that I figure that to build this product well, I should be prepared to spend 6 months on it. 6 months equates to 1,000 hours. My current hourly rate, and I hope this is okay if we say it on the webcast, that we're not like doing price fixing or whatever, but my current hourly rate with clients is $100 an hour. So 1,000 hours of my time at $50 an hour is giving a significant discount, and that gets us to $50,000. So I'm looking to see about clearing the $50,000 for the 1,000 hours of time that I put in to develop this project, but then I've got to pay Kickstarter their fee, I've got to pay Amazon Payments their fee, I've got to produce and ship the rewards, I've got to pay for web hosting, because right now I've got it on my own server, but it's got to be on its own servers, if this really starts getting traffic, and I've got to pay the Drupal Association to license the domain name. So I don't know exactly how much all those expenses are going to be, but you look at powers of 2, and 64 is a power of 2. I know that 64,000 is not a power of 2. You'll notice when I've got the limited number of backers on the project, those are true powers of 2 that are there. But so 50,000 was the baseline, and I needed to cover some expenses, so 64 seemed like the next nice number after 50. 32 wasn't going to cut it, and 64 was next. So there you have it.
So I actually have a question about the licensing. Do you have an idea what that is right now?
I do. I had contacted them, and I don't want to dig through my emails while I'm talking to you right now. That would be maybe wasting too much time. But I think it's something around like €1,500 to get the licensing fee.
Is that one time, or is that something you have to keep doing? I've never even looked at it before.
My understanding is that it's one time, and when you make the request, it's also dependent on whether this is considered a commercial product or not. I could potentially make the argument that this would be a non-profit and non-commercial, but I don't really want to go that route. I'd like to just keep it structured in a way that we've just paid for the license outright for having Drupal in the name.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, just out of curiosity, what happens, or what's your strategy if you don't make your goal? Right now, you're at
not even 1%.
9 backers and $556, and you have 35 days to go, which is just over a month. So you're looking to raise, another $63,000 in 35 days.
Yeah.
It seems like a large task, and hopefully this appearance will help towards that task. But what's the game plan if you don't make it, if you don't get to that goal?
Yeah, so the game plan is that I've already made some contacts through running the Kickstarter campaign, and so the key would be go back, build more of community support for this, build more of a base of people that I'm working with that will enable us to get the word out better, and will enable us to develop more of the product so that people can have more of a taste of it. So, if it's not funded, it's just a matter of, like I said earlier, just taking the next step and the next step to build more awareness, to build more support, and to build more collaborators on the project so that people can look at it and realize, well, it's not just Marc trying to do this all on his own.
Hey, Marc, does Kickstarter allow you to resubmit a project? Do you know?
I have not followed up with them because, first of all, got to think positively.
No. Just curious. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, so it was a thought. I don't think that they would prevent me from launching it again. So as far as a Kickstarter route, my thought was like, let's see what happens here.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't get funded, then let's maybe give it another year for me to continue working with some of the contacts I've already cultivated, and then maybe we'll take another look at this again at the end of 2015, or maybe we'll decide let's not try to do it in the holiday season. Maybe let's try to put it at the beginning of 2016. Or whenever we feel that we have enough backing for it. So that is something that
Kickstarter in my head is like it can also be used as like the TV show The Shark Tank. Not sure if anyone watches that, but there's a lot of companies that go on Shark Tank. They never get funded, but they use the Shark Tank as a mechanism to get publicity for their product. And I think Kickstarter is a way for you to do that. I also do want to follow up before we move on a question that I don't think you answered, which was how much of this campaign includes the generation of the content. So when the Kickstarter campaign is funded, how much content in terms of training actually will be on the site when it launches?
Okay, so what I've committed to in my deliverables there, I mentioned this is project-based teaching, and so there's 3 projects that I want to develop, and I've already built the beginner.d7.teachyourselfdrupal.org. I've got to build the intermediate and the advanced. So there's 3 projects that I'll put together, and then there's all the corresponding screencasts that get done for those projects. So that's the primary thing that I need to make sure I get done. The development of the membership part of the site takes a back seat to actually producing those sample projects and the screencasts that go along with those. So absolutely the content is included in that 1,000 hours and in the backing of the project. That's what comes first. Whatever I can do to build out the membership site, the teachyourselfdrupal.org piece of this thing here, that'll come in after I've made sure that I've produced the deliverables of those 3 projects and their screencasts and their scripts and all this stuff that's going to go into the repos.
Okay. So we're sort of wrapping. I think we're sort of in the wrap-up mode here for the show. Guys, what other questions do you have for Marc regarding either Kickstarter, his particular campaign, or anything else?
I had one question. That I wanted to ask earlier on, just didn't get to it. But why not build these tutorials or these lessons and use a platform like Code Academy and just have them be a lesson on Code Academy as opposed to building this whole platform and this whole this whole infrastructure around the lessons.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I honestly don't even know what platform Code Academy is built on, so I don't know whether that's built on Drupal or not. But it's important to me that the product that's teaching people Drupal is also built on Drupal. And as I mentioned, with this being ridiculously open, part of the things that will also be made available is how we built Teach Yourself Drupal. In fact, that might be something that would be a good idea to make as the advanced project right now. So rather than just doing, if I just did a bunch of screencasts that then I put onto Code Academy or someplace else, it doesn't really give the same level of collaboration and build the same opportunity to build the community, and I don't have the same level of control over it either in terms of like how things are going to go in the repo, and like how you guys mentioned some of the cool idea of like, wow, if you used feeds or did node export or something like that where you're playing between the repo and the teachyourselfdrupal.org, I don't have the opportunity to do things like that if I don't have control over the platform.
And I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the only I see where John's coming from with that, just being worried that it's about the content and not about building the thing to deliver the content. But I mean, I guess if you're keeping it simple, then maybe that's not such an issue, because I do think you're right. I think it's important that people see it as a platform that's showing. A teaching platform that's showing what the platform can do,
and also a philosophy. I think there's a piece here about the philosophy that maybe some of these other platforms don't support as well. Code Academy is about just providing code. It's not necessarily about providing a lot of the other pieces connected to this, which is the ridiculously open pieces. And you have the opportunity in maybe a platform that you can control to create a way to deliver that information. Well,
it certainly makes sense that it's not on Drupal.org. I think that it wouldn't really be possible. Right. It would, I think, get lost there. And there would be a lot of restrictions on what you could actually put into a repository that way.
Just out of curiosity, are there any statistics on the ridiculously open aspect of this as far as like how many people are really interested in like the way that you learned how to do what you're doing as opposed to like the practice of doing what you're doing? For example, I know a lot of people that are searching the internet for videos on how to, make X do Y, and they don't really care about like how you figured out how to make X do Y. They just want to know how to make X do Y. Are there statistics out there that show that there's a large user base that's very interested in like the backstory or the learning points to get to that point?
I don't know if there are statistics. As far as I'm aware, like I'm the one who's come up with this concept of being ridiculously open and this whole immersive learning type of opportunity. So I wouldn't expect that there are any statistics because I don't think there are any Roost sites out there yet where you could even gather the statistics. But I haven't done any research to prove or disprove that assumption.
Well, I think there are plenty of people that gravitate to Drupal that use Drupal because they like to know what's behind it. I think what's an important thing to address, and I think that John was onto this, is that we are not our own users in this case. And if you want to bring people to the platform, you sit somebody down in front of WordPress, and it doesn't really take a whole lot of instruction to get them making a site in WordPress. And the same can't be said for Drupal yet. And I think Drupal 8 goes a long way to address that, and I think it actually takes it further than what WordPress can do for a novice. But like there are these different levels of people, like people who are just building sites, and can they come to this and just learn how to build sites by going to their web host and saying, click a button, I would like Drupal. Okay, now I have Drupal, I'm going to go do stuff. And I think that's an important difference in the audience, in the potential audiences that we have for it.
Well, one point is that just because something's made available to people doesn't mean that they have to take advantage of it either. And it certainly isn't going to be presented in a way that's going to get in their way of learning what they want to learn. It's something that if they wanted to get more of the immersive experience, they could take advantage of it, but they're not going to be forced. They're not going to be doused with a fire hose with it if they don't have an interest in it. And definitely, part of the whole idea here, again, with that roosts and nests and dealing with these tender young fledgling birds here in the nest is to make sure that things are going to be accessible to people so they very quickly can get up to speed on things, and so that they've got an easy way that they can find out what they want to know without having to know a ton of other stuff. And they don't have to be afraid of that people are going to laugh at them because I can't believe that you don't even know how to do, I can't believe that you don't even know how to add items to a menu. How could you be so stupid? That it'll be a place that there are no stupid questions. And so for the people who do struggle getting a grasp on Drupal, that they're going to have the opportunity to say, oh, this site's totally okay with the fact that I'm completely lost and I don't know where to get started right now.
Jason, you've created a training program for responsive design. It's a training session that you created, and you get paid really good money to go deliver that session to people who want to learn that stuff. But you've also taken all of the content for that material that you deliver, and you've made it available on GitHub.
Yeah, it's true.
So I'm interested in like this like some of the stuff you've done feels like this concept of a roost to me. And why did you, as someone who is profiting, that sounds terrible, but profiting from these, it's a training session, it's a part of your living. Why did you make that an open source content for people to have access to?
I struggled with that a little bit, and I asked a bunch of friends that do this sort of thing. And I think one of the people who gave me a lot of inspiration in that sense was Brad Frost, and he puts tons and tons of stuff out in the open that's incredibly valuable, and you start to see it perk up into other people's projects. But interestingly enough, he does not do that with his workshop code. And I asked him about it, and basically, I think his take was, I'm giving away so much other stuff, I don't think I need to give this away. I didn't have as much other stuff to give away, and I thought that since I was giving this workshop a number of times, that it was easier for me to keep it straight and keep it in good shape and working really well for everybody. And then I really kind of hit upon the phrase that people are going to hire the teacher, not the textbook.
Right.
And that was really what it came down to, is that people still want to pay me to teach this stuff because I'm good at teaching it. But what I have gathered together is not necessarily so different from what you can get in other places. I mean, maybe I would hope it's a little better, but it's the teaching part. I think that's what sets it apart.
Okay.
No, I don't know. Maybe not. Haven't sold out the next workshop yet.
Okay, so add that to the outro notes that we have in the in the document for today, so we can make sure people are aware of that, because it's coming up in January. So, Marc, thank you for joining us today. I hope that you feel like you got an opportunity to talk about what you were trying to promote, and that our questions were fair in any way. And I would encourage anyone to go to Kickstarter and look up Teach Yourself Drupal. To give you a URL to that page directly is difficult verbally. So it is in our show notes, so you can get access to it there. But do you have any parting words here for everyone, Marc?
I'm just really glad that I got a chance to talk with you guys. And as far as any questions, that whether they're fair or not, I just want to repeat what I've said already. I'm serious about being ridiculously open. There are no questions that are off limits. I want to hear from people. I want to hear whatever concerns. I want to hear suggestions, whatever kind of feedback you have, because I mean it when I say that I want people to participate in this project. So you never have to feel like, oh, that was rude of me to ask that. I mean, if it's a question that you have, a concern that you have, I want to know about it. That's the only way that that I'm going to be able to make the product the best that it can be and get the idea off the ground.
So moving forward, Marc, if you have any updates for us over the next few months, we're happy to mention them on the show and tweet them out to our audience, just to keep us involved in what you're working on, like we've done with other guests in the past. And let's move on to module of the week, which we'll do quickly. This module has been sitting here for 5 weeks, 6 weeks? I don't know. Yes. Well, why do we keep pushing it off? I don't even know why that is. Because something bigger and better comes along?
Yeah,
we were talking about Nude Camp for 2 hours last week, and we decided we had to wrap it up.
That's why. I don't know what the excuse was the week before. But
we had a more topical.
Yeah, maybe it was more topical. Okay, but we have computed field module. This is a module that you can add a field to a content type and put some PHP code around it, and it will store whatever value you want to store in it. That's pretty much what it does. Have you guys tried to use this in the past?
I have not.
I think briefly on one project, and then I realized it didn't do what I was looking for, and I haven't touched it again.
So this is the opportunity for you. So if you have a content type, I have an example of it. It's I had a situation where I have a content type, and I needed to display and put views into that content type based on user roles. So I want to sort that content based on user role, Has anyone tried to base sort content on user role in the past?
No.
It's not possible with views. You cannot create a relationship and sort by user role. So one of the ways I addressed this was I created a computed field on the content type, and I wrote a little bit of PHP code that says every time this content type is saved, do some stuff, which it would go out and look at the author and make some decisions about how this thing should be sorted based on role. That's a pretty straightforward example on how to use this, but if you're comfortable in writing some PHP code and looking up some things in Drupal, you can create a computed field that will just about do anything for you in Drupal. And it's any content you have access to, you can write little stuff and update it. So what happens is every time the node is saved, this little block of PHP code runs, and you can set the value to any condition you want it to be. It could be it's called computed field, so you could do sums. Like if you just want to have an easy way to do summing of data, dollar values, and not build that into the views, you could put that right into a field if you're using it often, which would speed up other things in your website. So calculating a value spread out over a node save is probably better than calculating a value every time you're trying to display it. That's the concept here.
Well, and I think that's one of these things, sort of like a little hidden gem in Drupal performance that a lot of people forget about. It's so easy to build a view that does all this stuff dynamically, and you start to forget that it's spawning off all these additional queries and all this extra calculation time that could be getting done over 1,000 records when that stuff just doesn't change.
Yeah, so the capabilities of this thing are endless. And once you create the computed field, you can use it in a view. It works perfectly fine. It's as if any other field you have in your table today. So it works great. So, and they call it the Swiss Army knife of fields, which is a great way to describe what this module does and what this function does. Great. So let's end today's show. Jason.
You can find me at jpomentel pretty much anywhere, all the social networks and all that. You can come learn about responsive typography at the Web Coffee Workshop at the end of January in Boston. There's still a few super early bird ticks for a full day for only $299.
Jason, what would be the reason for someone to sign up for this? Who is the typical person that this is the ideal situation for them?
Well, a lot of it is covering both the design implications of using web fonts, but also technically how to implement them well. So one example of the first chunk of tickets went to a team from within an organization, a developer and a couple of designers. And so they're all coming so they can learn how to do this on their projects and get the fastest performance and not sacrifice the user experience.
Great.
So it's a little bit for both sides of whatever you lean towards, design or development or both.
Excellent. How about you, John?
I'm John Picozzi. Wishing everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving. Send us your turkey pictures at Talking Drupal. Love to see those. And you can find me on all the social networks at John Picozzi, and always on at oomfinc.com.
All right, there's a challenge there. So if you're celebrating Thanksgiving, take your camera out and take a picture of your turkey and send it to Talking Drupal. I love it, John.
And we want mashed potatoes in the shape of a Drupalcon. I mean, let's get creative here.
John, if we thought of this ahead of time, we could have created a contest. So we'll just do it for fun. So how about you, Nick?
You can find me online at Nixman and probably later tonight shoveling outside. But I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. If you decide to deep fry the turkey, make sure you thaw it first. Don't overfill it. But for the American listeners, I don't know, Thanksgiving's probably my favorite holiday. Pretty close to Christmas, but Thanksgiving's always really good, so I hope everybody has a great holiday.
Nick, why is it your favorite holiday?
I don't know. It was one of the two. It marks the start of the really big holiday season with Christmas. You know, things start slowing down at work. I always get together with my family, play a bunch of board games. When I was a kid, we'd always pick out of the hat for the Yankee swap for the extended family. Just a lot of good memories, and the food.
Yeah, it's a great Thanksgiving always marks a great family, like a 4 or 5 week family time for us. So yeah, it's the start of the holiday season.
Too. I mean, as long as you're talking to somebody who lives in the U.S., I mean, we have to put some brackets around it, but otherwise, like, you can wish anybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Well, and that's one of the things too. My wife, you know, in Colombia they have Easter, they have Christmas, but Thanksgiving and Independence Day are like the two holidays that we really have that we celebrate that are interesting. I mean, every time there's a new holiday like Veterans Day, she always thinks we're going to celebrate it with a big get together. But you know, between Thanksgiving and Independence Day, those are the two really big ones that we have. So it's always fun to celebrate something new with somebody that's never had that experience before.
So the one thing I want to bring up before we leave is, and did John mention Drupal PVD?
He did not.
No, he did not. Okay, I couldn't. It's in the notes here. So for those of you in the New England area, there's a Drupal PVD on December 9th. You can go to drupalpvd.org. I don't think the site is updated with the current information.
Updated today.
Yeah, but you can also go to Meetup. The Meetup website, and you can get information there.
Yeah, meetup.com/DrupalPVD, and you can get notifications that way.
Great. So if you're in Boston, Providence, Connecticut, and just want to hook up, we had a great meeting last month. We changed the format to be more of a what did we call it, Jason?
Well, I think we've been doing this sort of like mentoring mixer. Where we'll have a shorter presentation, and then we'll let people can kind of naturally sort of break up into groups to get some help on things. So we had a lot of people pulling out laptops to ask questions and talk about how to solve different challenges. Kind of like we started to get into today. It was really great, and I think we had more people there than we've had in months. So it was nice.
And the format for this next one.
It's going to be a little bit more like the Boston meetups, where it's going to be a little bit more of a lightning talk kind of setup. Right. And the lightning talks, I think it's really important to let people know that it's not just for presenting something, it might be for asking for help. If you have something that you want to show off that you're struggling with, and get the benefit of everybody looking at it and saying, hey, well, why don't you try X, Y, or Z, or brag about something, show something cool that you've been working on. Anything goes. Each person will have, I think, around 10 minutes or so to show off a few slides or a few screenshots or walk through something.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And the last thing I just want to mention is that there's sort of a Talking Drupal spin-off a little bit. It's called Exploring Drupal 8. It's a discussion, like a book club format, we call it, every Tuesday. We just finished the third week. Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, we get on a conference call, a screencast thing, and we pick a topic for Drupal 8, and we talk about it. It's an opportunity to learn a little bit about Drupal 8, to share experiences, and really explore it. So we're going to have the fourth week coming up next week. If you are interested in joining it, go to exploringdrupal8.com. You can get some information on how to get the invite there. So anyone who wants to join, you're welcome. Marc, so anything else for you before we leave?
Where can we find you online?
Well, I'm vegan triathlete wherever I was able to claim it. So for those of you taking pictures of the turkey, please don't tweet them to me because I'm not really interested in your dead bird on a plate.
Fair enough.
Marc, I had in the show notes to ask you, and we didn't get to it because we were running late. But I'm going to ask you anyway. The vegan triathlete, I'm just fascinated by those two words together. My wife is a vegetarian, and she is cooking a turkey for us, by the way. Bless her heart. I have to pick it up and wash it and put it in the pan, but she does everything else. But Vegan triathlete. Where does that come from? Tell us just a little bit about that.
Absolutely, it's true. It's exactly what it says. I'm both vegan and a triathlete. I've done up to half Ironman distance triathlons, and I will be doing my first Ironman distance triathlon actually on my birthday in 2015 in Boulder. August 2nd, 2015 will be my first Ironman distance triathlon.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow, congratulations. Keep us in the loop of what's happening, and we'll be following you online.
Thanks.
Where can people follow you online?
Twitter, I assume. Vegan triathlete.
Oh, at TY Drupal. I was not able to claim at Vegan Triathlete, unfortunately. That's why I said I claimed it wherever I could. My nick on Drupal is Vegan Triathlete, and IRC, I'm Vegan Triathlete, but on Twitter you should find me at TY Drupal or at Marc_Isaacson.
Great.
Right.
Thank you, Marc, and we'll see everyone next week. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.